Welcome back to the channel. And no, dying from sex isn't just something that happens in movies. In Hollywood, it's a terrifying reality that's happened more times than people want to admit. One legend met a tragic end after a night of uncontrollable passion. Another star was brutally killed in his own bed, by his own father, driven by obsession and twisted desire. And those stories? They're only the beginning. Tonight, brace yourself for the shocking and unsettling truths behind the mysterious deaths of 15 famous black figures. These are stories buried under fame, silence, and carefully crafted lies, secrets Hollywood never wanted the public to uncover. Fame made them seem untouchable, or so the world believed. These black celebrities lived beneath blinding lights, worshipped by millions, desired endlessly, and surrounded by temptation that never slept. But behind the applause and polished images were private moments, moments that crossed a dangerous line and turned fatal. Stay with us, because once you hear these stories, you'll never look at fame the same way again. Kim Porter and the terrifying mystery surrounding her death. Kim Porter was more than a celebrated model and the longtime partner of hip-hop mogul D. She was a mother, a public figure, and a woman many believed had quietly stepped away from a dangerous chapter of her life. In 2018, at just 47 years old, Kim died suddenly. The official cause was pneumonia. But from the moment the news broke, something about her death never sat right. Years later, in 2024, when Dee was arrested on charges of sexual assault and sex trafficking, the questions surrounding Kim's death resurfaced with renewed intensity. Whispers turned into investigations. And then came a memoir, allegedly written by Kim herself, that sent shockwaves through the public. What it described was not the glamorous superstar the world knew, but a far darker figure hiding behind fame and power. According to the memoir, one night Kim arrived at Dee's mansion, radiant as ever. But the atmosphere inside felt wrong. Candles flickered, soft music filled the air, and the setting felt staged, romantic on the surface, yet deeply unsettling underneath. Kim sensed something was off, but she never could have imagined what would follow. The evening began with familiar charm and sweet words, but the tone quickly shifted. Dee allegedly told Kim he no longer wanted her simply as a lover. He wanted more. He wanted her to participate in what he described as a game, one involving other people. When Kim refused, the mood reportedly turned cold and threatening. The memoir claims intimidation followed, including locked doors and even the presence of a gun, trapping her in a moment of sheer terror. From there, Kim was said to have endured escalating psychological pressure and coercion, demands that stripped away her sense of safety and control. The woman once known for her strength and poise began to break down. She grew weaker. She coughed constantly. Her vision blurred. She felt suffocated, not only by fear, but by an illness that seemed to tighten its grip on her body. On November 15, 2018, Kim Porter was gone. Authorities ruled her death as pneumonia. But the stories that emerged afterward painted a far more disturbing picture. The memoir described a man driven by control and cruelty, exposing emotional and psychological abuse hidden behind wealth and celebrity. Kim's death, once dismissed as a tragic medical event, became a haunting symbol of how power can silence truth, sometimes permanently. Her story stands as a chilling reminder of Hollywood's darkest corners, where appearances deceive, secrets are buried deep, and the truth often comes out too late. Tupac Shakur. The death of a man who knew too much. Tupac Shakur wasn't just a rapper. He was a voice of rebellion, a cultural force, and one of the most fearless truth-tellers hip-hop had ever known. When he died in 1996 at just 25 years old, the world lost a legend. But what if it also lost a man who was about to expose secrets too powerful to survive? By the mid-1990s, hip-hop was on fire, and the East Coast-West Coast rivalry had become a public war. On one side stood Tupac, the raw, unfiltered voice of the West. On the other, a dominant East Coast empire led by figures with immense influence, wealth, and connections far beyond music. Diss tracks flew, interviews turned hostile, and the tension became impossible to ignore. But beneath the headlines and bravado was something far darker. Everything changed in 1994, after Tupac survived a brutal shooting inside a New York recording studio. Bleeding and betrayed, he accused people he once trusted, men he called brothers, of setting him up. His anger wasn't aimed at just one rapper. It extended to the powerful gatekeepers behind the scenes, men who controlled careers, money, and access to elite inner circles where rules didn't apply. Whispers began to circulate. Stories of extravagant penthouse parties, invitation-only gatherings where excess ruled and morality disappeared. Rumors claimed loyalty was bought, silence was enforced, and secrets were currency. Tupac, never one to stay quiet, began hinting at what he had seen, what he knew. In his music, his interviews, and his coded warnings, he suggested that some of the industry's most powerful figures were living double lives. And then the pressure started. Late-night phone calls. Vague threats. Friends urging him to slow down. One chilling warning echoed in his mind, "You're talking too much." But Tupac refused to retreat. Those close to him claimed he had proof, something concrete. The tape. Photographs. A list of names. Evidence powerful enough to destroy reputations and collapse empires built on silence. As Tupac moved through 1996, he knew he was being watched. Every step, every appearance, every word was monitored. He was defiant, but the danger was real. On September 7, 1996, in Las Vegas, Tupac Shakur was ambushed. Multiple gunshots tore through the night. 6 days later, the voice that shook the world went silent. So the question remains, was Tupac killed because of a rap rivalry gone too far? Or was he silenced because he was on the verge of exposing secrets some people would kill to keep buried? And if he really did have the evidence, where did it go? The notorious B.I.G., a legendary life, a brutal death, and secrets the industry never wanted exposed. Known to the world as Biggie Smalls, he was more than a rap icon. He was a man who, according to whispers that still echo through hip-hop history, may have known too much. In March of 1997, just 6 months after Tupac Shakur was murdered, Los Angeles glittered with fame, parties, and false smiles. Biggie had come to town to celebrate success, but beneath the flashing lights, danger was already closing in. As his Chevy Suburban rolled down Wilshire Boulevard in the early hours of March 9th, no one inside imagined it would be his final ride. At a quiet intersection, a black Chevy Impala pulled alongside him. Seconds later, gunfire exploded through the night, sharp, sudden, unforgiving. Biggie was struck multiple times. Within moments, one of hip-hop's greatest voices was silenced forever. For years, the story was framed as another chapter in the East Coast-West Coast feud. But many believe that explanation barely scratches the surface. To some, Biggie wasn't just a casualty of rivalry, he was a liability. Behind the scenes, the music industry was a maze of power, money, and whispered scandals. Biggie had allegedly begun to see the darker machinery at work, secret alliances, criminal ties, and indulgent private worlds that powerful figures worked desperately to keep hidden. Rumors suggest that tensions grew between Biggie and D, the mogul who stood at the center of an empire built on influence and fear. What was once brotherhood allegedly turned into quiet hostility. During a private encounter, Biggie was said to have received a chilling warning. "If you don't want to end up like Tupac, stay quiet." Those words, whether spoken or not, symbolize how close Biggie may have come to crossing an invisible line. Despite the danger, he couldn't, or wouldn't, look away. The deeper he went, the clearer it became that he had wandered into a world where secrets were protected at any cost. And in that world, knowing too much could be a death sentence. The bullets that tore through Biggie's vehicle that night didn't just end a life, they erased a witness. If the rumors are true, his murder wasn't about rap beef at all. It was about silence. Permanent silence. Today, Biggie's death remains one of the most haunting mysteries in music history. A cautionary tale of fame, power, and the price of uncovering truths others would kill to keep buried. His voice lives on, but the secrets he may have carried died with him, locked forever in the shadows of an industry built on glamour, lust, and blood-stained ambition. R. Kelly, a reckoning from the shadows. R. Kelly was once untouchable, a towering name in R&B. An idol whose voice filled arenas and whose songs became the soundtrack of a generation. But fame has a way of hiding rot, and eventually, the shadows come calling. After years of allegations, denials, and evasion, the empire collapsed. Convicted and stripped of his crown, Kelly faded from the spotlight and into confinement, where applause was replaced by cold concrete and endless nights alone. There, far from the world that once protected him, he was left with nothing but memory and guilt. In this dark, fictional reckoning, prison was not merely a place of punishment. It became a mirror. Night after night, the silence grew heavier. The walls seemed to whisper. The faces he tried to forget refused to stay buried. The women he had harmed were no longer distant headlines or courtroom testimonies. They became relentless presences, haunting his thoughts, his sleep, his sanity. One winter night, as the prison fell eerily quiet, Kelly sat alone in his cell, staring at a blank page. For the first time, he attempted to write an apology, too late, too small, too hollow. The air suddenly turned icy. The overhead light flickered. The cell door creaked, though no guard appeared. Then he felt it. A cold hand on his shoulder. He turned, heart pounding, only to face hollow eyes staring back at him. Not one face, but many. Silent. Unforgiving. Pay for what you've done. The voice didn't come from a mouth. It came from everywhere. Pain seized his chest, crushing, relentless, as if every sin he had buried was collapsing into a single moment of judgment. In his final seconds, he saw them clearly, not as victims begging for mercy, but as witnesses reclaiming power. There was no escape. No plea left to make. He fell to the floor alone, consumed not by violence, but by consequence. By morning, the cell was silent once more. In this haunting allegory, the message is clear. You can outrun courts. You can outrun fame. But you can never outrun the truth. Every shadow remembers. And every crime demands a reckoning. Sam Cooke, the mysterious death tied to two women in a seedy motel. Sam Cooke wasn't just a singer. He was a revolution. With a velvet voice and timeless hits, he reshaped R&B and crossed racial lines at a time when few dared to. But on December 11, 1964, at the height of his power, his life ended in a cloud of fear, violence, and unanswered questions inside a Los Angeles motel. That night began innocently enough. After hours of drinking and laughter, Sam arrived at a motel on South Figueroa Street with a young woman named Elisa Boyer. What should have been a fleeting encounter quickly unraveled. Elisa later claimed Sam behaved inappropriately and fled the room in terror, leaving behind a confused, intoxicated, and increasingly agitated Sam, unaware that his world was about to collapse. Disoriented and furious, Sam stormed to the front desk, demanding to know where Elisa had gone. Behind the counter stood Bertha Franklin, the motel manager. Witnesses described a chaotic scene. Sam pounding the desk, knocking items to the floor, his anger fueled by alcohol and panic. Feeling threatened, Bertha reached for a gun and fired 3 shots. One bullet pierced Sam's heart. He collapsed on the motel floor, his blood soaking into his elegant coat, an undignified and shocking end for one of music's greatest voices. Elisa was later found and repeated her story of fear. Bertha claimed self-defense. Authorities accepted both accounts, and the case was closed with unsettling speed. But for many, the story never added up. How could a man of Sam Cooke's stature die like this? His legacy stained by allegations from a woman who had willingly accompanied him. Why were so many details glossed over? And why did the investigation end so quietly? Over time, darker theories emerged. Some believe Sam's growing influence, his business independence, and his outspoken stance on civil rights made him dangerous to powerful interests within the music industry. To them, his death wasn't random, it was convenient. Sam Cooke's final night didn't just end a life. It ignited decades of doubt, suspicion, and grief. A legend silenced in a cheap motel room, leaving behind music that still soars, and a death that remains, to this day, shrouded in mystery. Marvin Gaye. Killed by the one man who was supposed to protect him. Marvin Gaye was a musical prophet. His voice healed hearts, his love songs softened the world, and his lyrics spoke truths many were afraid to say. To millions, he was the sound of romance, vulnerability, and soul. But behind the velvet melodies lived a man trapped in constant turmoil, haunted by guilt, fear, and a lifelong war inside his own home. In 1984, that private nightmare exploded into a public horror. Marvin Gaye was shot and killed by his own father. That night began like countless others, tense, uncomfortable, but familiar. An argument ignited between Marvin and Reverend Marvin Gaye Sr., a rigid, domineering man who had spent decades condemning his son's lifestyle as sinful and shameful. What started as criticism quickly reopened years of emotional wounds. Marvin, exhausted from a lifetime of judgment and control, finally snapped. For the first time, he didn't retreat. He pushed back. His mother, Alberta, tried desperately to stand between them, begging for calm, but the damage had already been done. Marvin Sr., consumed by his own obsessions and rage, reached for a gun. His words cut colder than steel. "If you weren't my son, I'd have killed you a long time ago." Marvin didn't run. He didn't plead. He stepped closer, defiant, broken, daring his father to end it. The first gunshot shattered the room. The second sealed his fate. Marvin Gaye fell to the floor as blood soaked into the carpet, the light fading from the eyes that once moved the world. In seconds, a legend was gone. His death was more than a family tragedy. It was a devastating shock to the music industry and a brutal reminder that fame cannot protect you from unresolved pain. Marvin's life ended where his suffering began, inside a home ruled by fear, impossible expectations, and emotional violence. Marvin Gaye didn't just lose his life that night. He lost a lifelong battle with a past that never loosened its grip. His story stands as a haunting testament to fractured families, unhealed trauma, and the silent storms that can destroy even the brightest stars. Eazy-E, a life fueled by excess, ending in one of hip-hop's most painful tragedies. The godfather of gangsta rap wasn't just an artist, he was a movement. With raw, unfiltered lyrics and zero apologies, Eazy-E gave a voice to the streets and helped turn NWA into a cultural earthquake that reshaped hip-hop forever. To his fans, he was untouchable, fearless, larger than life. But behind the fame was a man living fast and dangerously free. Raised in Compton, California, a neighborhood marked by poverty, violence, and limited guidance, Eazy-E grew up surrounded by harsh realities. In an environment where masculinity was often measured by dominance and excess, his views on relationships were shaped early. Success only magnified it. As fame exploded, so did the temptations, reckless relationships, non-stop parties, and nights that blurred into mornings. For Eazy, life felt like an endless celebration, no limits, no consequences. Until the bill came due. In late 1994, his body began sending quiet warnings. Unexplained fatigue, piercing headaches, dizzy spells when he stood up. But like many men taught to equate strength with silence, Eazy ignored the signs. He kept working, kept touring, kept living like nothing could touch him, unaware that something deadly already had. Within months, the decline was impossible to deny. Chronic exhaustion set in. His lymph nodes swelled. His strength faded fast. When he finally sought medical help, the truth hit like a gunshot: HIV positive. The virus had been attacking his body in silence for years. By the time it was discovered, the damage was irreversible. Doctors later said that if the diagnosis had come sooner, Eazy could have lived many more years. But time had already run out. Just weeks after learning the truth, Eazy died in March 1995 at only 31 years old, from complications related to AIDS. His death sent shockwaves through hip-hop and beyond. It shattered the illusion of invincibility and forced a generation to confront a harsh reality. Freedom without caution can be fatal. Eazy became more than a legend. He became a warning, a symbol of a world overflowing with temptation, where momentary pleasure can demand the ultimate price. His music lives forever. But his story reminds us, even icons are human. Bernie Mac, the fearless comedian whose laughter shook arenas, and whose final days became clouded by whispers and unanswered questions. Bernie Mac wasn't just funny. He was electric. With a single glance or a perfectly timed pause, he could bring an entire room to its knees in laughter. His presence was larger than life, magnetic, unforgettable. People didn't just watch Bernie Mac, they felt him. But in the summer of 2008, as his career legacy stood tall, something darker crept into the story. In the days leading up to his sudden decline, rumors began to circulate, quiet at first, then louder. Late nights. Private encounters. A mysterious woman some claimed he met at a party. Stories grew legs, fueled by shock, speculation, and the public's hunger for a dramatic explanation. Then Bernie fell ill. What started as discomfort quickly became alarming. His body weakened. His breathing struggled. Doctors worked urgently, yet the illness moved fast, too fast. Within days, the man who once commanded laughter was fighting simply to survive. On August 9, 2008, Bernie Mac passed away from complications of pneumonia, a battle worsened by sarcoidosis, a disease he had endured quietly for years. But even after the truth was released, the rumors refused to die. Some whispered about a curse. Others spun tales of a femme fatale, a fatal night, a hidden secret. None were proven. All were shadows, created when fame meets tragedy and grief searches for meaning. The real tragedy isn't a scandal. It's that a man who brought joy to millions suffered in silence. Bernie Mac's story reminds us of something uncomfortable yet human. Behind the laughter, behind the spotlight, even the strongest entertainers are still vulnerable. His death wasn't a mystery born of passion, it was a reminder of mortality. And his legacy? That will always live louder than any rumor ever could. Phyllis Hyman was a gifted voice trapped in a deceptive love she could never escape. With a sound that carried both elegance and aching vulnerability, Phyllis Hyman captivated audiences around the world. Her voice was rich, emotional, and unmistakable, one that could fill Broadway theaters and leave listeners breathless. On stage, she shimmered. Applause followed her everywhere. But behind the lights and standing ovations, Phyllis was quietly unraveling. Beneath her radiant smile lived relentless waves of depression, anxiety, and a loneliness no fame could soothe. The music industry celebrated her brilliance, yet it never protected her heart. While she appeared confident and alive in the spotlight, her private world told a far darker story. At the center of her pain was a long, deeply unbalanced relationship with a man she loved far more than he ever loved her. What bound them wasn't just romance. It was a toxic cycle of desire, emotional neglect, and false hope. Phyllis gave herself completely, her love, her trust, her body, while receiving only fragments in return. Over time, she began to realize the truth she feared most. To him, she was not a partner, but a convenience. A game. An emotional escape with no intention of commitment. By June of 1995, the weight had become unbearable. One night, after a Broadway performance, Phyllis returned to her hotel emotionally exhausted. At an after-show gathering, she once again crossed paths with the man who had broken her heart again and again. That night, history repeated itself. They fell back into the same destructive pattern, one fueled by vulnerability, lies, and unspoken desperation. When it ended, she felt completely hollow, abandoned, used. The realization finally hit her with crushing force. This relationship had taken everything from her. Her self-worth, her faith in love, her belief that the future could be kinder than the past. She felt trapped, not only by him, but by her own longing to be loved in a world that kept taking without giving back. On June 30, 1995, alone in her apartment, Phyllis Hyman faced an emptiness so deep she could no longer fight it. At just 45 years old, she made the heartbreaking decision to end her life. Phyllis Hyman left behind a timeless musical legacy and a silent wound that fame never healed. Her death was not only the result of years of depression, but also the final consequence of a relationship that slowly consumed her spirit. What once felt intoxicating ultimately drained the last light from a woman who gave the world so much, yet never received the love she deserved. Chinks, a rising hip-hop star undone by a dangerous love. Chinks was more than just another rapper on the come-up. With his smooth delivery, raw creativity, and undeniable presence, he was quickly becoming one of the brightest new voices in hip-hop. His career was taking off, doors were opening, and the future looked limitless. But behind the flashing lights and packed clubs, Chinks was walking into a darkness no one could see. On the night of May 17, 2015, he had just finished a triumphant performance at a popular Queens nightclub. Riding the high of the crowd's energy, his mind buzzed with excitement about new music, new moves, and a life finally unfolding the way he dreamed. As he drove down familiar streets, he had no idea that his journey was about to end. Months earlier, at a lavish party, Chinks met a beautiful, magnetic woman who swept him off his feet. She was intoxicating, charming, seductive, impossible to ignore. But she carried secrets buried deep in the underground world. Ties to dangerous people. Connections Chinks never imagined would touch his life. Blinded by passion, he stepped into a relationship that quietly pulled him into a deadly web. Friends warned him. Whispers of danger followed her name. But Chinks brushed them off, convinced love couldn't be lethal. Caught in the illusion, he never saw the storm closing in. That night, as his car rolled through Queens, the trap snapped shut. At an intersection, two figures emerged from the shadows. They weren't random rivals or strangers. They were men she had brought into his world. Men who believed they'd been betrayed. Seconds later, gunfire tore through the night. The music stopped. The city froze. Chinks slumped in his seat, blood staining the leather, silence swallowing the street. Just moments before, his car echoed with hip-hop dreams. Now, all that remained was a chilling stillness, and a life taken far too soon. Chinks's story is a haunting reminder that sometimes the greatest danger doesn't come from the streets, but from the people we trust the most. Howard Rollins Jr. was a rare talent, an actor whose brilliance lit up the screen and promised a future without limits. With unforgettable performances in Ragtime and A Soldier's Story, he rose fast, earning praise, admiration, and a place among Hollywood's most gifted performers. To the world, Howard Rollins was a shining star. But behind the applause and prestige, a far more painful story was quietly unfolding. Like many who reach fame too quickly, Howard carried enormous pressure beneath the spotlight. The glamour masked deep loneliness, nights filled with excess, fleeting relationships, and choices made in moments of escape rather than intention. His personal life grew complicated, marked by secret affairs and risky encounters he never imagined would come at such a devastating cost. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, cracks began to show. Howard felt constantly drained. His body weakened. Fevers came and went. At first, he blamed the grind of Hollywood, the long hours, the stress, the expectations. But the truth was far more serious. Medical tests eventually delivered a diagnosis that would change everything: AIDS. It was a crushing reality. The unprotected encounters he once dismissed as harmless had become a lifelong sentence. The illness progressed rapidly, stripping away his strength, his energy, and ultimately his ability to work. Despite treatment, his health continued to decline. The vibrant force audiences once knew was fading, quietly, painfully, and largely out of public view. In December 1996, Howard Rollins Jr. passed away at just 41 years old, leaving behind stunned fans, grieving colleagues, and an industry forced to confront the fragile humanity behind its stars. His death was more than a personal tragedy. It was a sobering reminder of the very real consequences of unsafe sexual practices during a time when awareness was still shadowed by stigma and silence. Howard Rollins' legacy is not only one of extraordinary talent, but also of warning and truth. Fame does not protect us. Pleasure without caution can carry irreversible consequences. And behind every legend is a human being, vulnerable, imperfect, and deserving of compassion long before it's too late. Jermaine Stewart, the 80s pop star whose fearless lifestyle carried a fatal price. Jermaine Stewart burst onto the music scene in the 1980s like pure electricity. With his iconic hit, "We Don't Have to Take Our Clothes Off," he became the soundtrack of freedom, pleasure, and unapologetic self-expression. On stage, he was magnetic. Off stage, he lived just as loudly, surrounded by non-stop parties, fleeting romances, and a belief that the night would never end. To his fans, Jermaine wasn't just a singer. He was rebellion in motion, a symbol of living without limits. But that same freedom slowly became his undoing. Jermaine's sex life grew reckless and unrestrained, marked by casual encounters and little concern for protection. Pleasure came easily. Consequences did not, at least not at first. Night after night blurred together, until his body began sending signals he chose to ignore. By the mid-1990s, strange symptoms crept in. Crushing fatigue, unexplained fevers, bruising, swollen lymph nodes. Jermaine dismissed them as stress, exhaustion, the price of fame. But when his health collapsed, the truth could no longer be avoided. Doctors delivered a devastating diagnosis, HIV. For a man who radiated life, the news was almost impossible to accept. Someone so vibrant, so full of energy, facing a disease that was largely preventable, it felt unreal. Publicly, Jermaine remained smiling and strong. Privately, his body was breaking down. HIV progressed into AIDS, stripping away his strength day by day. Pain became constant. Hope grew fragile. In his final months, Jermaine Stewart was forced to confront the reality he had outrun for years. The music faded. The parties stopped. What remained was reflection and regret. In March 1997, Jermaine Stewart passed away, leaving behind a powerful catalog of music and a heartbreaking lesson written in his own life. His death stunned fans and silenced a voice that once celebrated freedom without fear. But it also became a warning, one that still echoes today. Pleasure without protection can cost everything. And sometimes, the most preventable choices carry the most permanent consequences. Kenny Green, the velvet-smooth voice of 90s R&B, silenced far too soon. As the lead singer of the group Intro, Kenny Green became the soundtrack of romance for a generation. With tender hits like Funny How Time Flies, his voice dripped with longing, vulnerability, and soul. On stage, he was pure elegance, soft-spoken, charming, and impossibly smooth. But behind the spotlight lived a different reality. At the height of his fame, Kenny embraced a fast, pleasure-driven lifestyle. The parties never seemed to end, and intimacy often came without caution. In an era where success felt limitless and consequences felt distant, protection was ignored and risks were brushed aside. It was a carefree world, until reality caught up. Around the year 2000, his body began sending warnings he could no longer silence. Crushing fatigue, sudden weight loss, pain that wouldn't fade. When the test results came back, they shattered everything. Kenny Green was HIV positive. At the time, HIV carried not only physical devastation but crushing stigma. Fear of judgment and shame pushed Kenny into silence. He guarded his diagnosis closely, determined that his music, not his illness, would define his legacy. But the disease advanced quickly, and his strength faded just as fast. In 2001, at only 32 years old, Kenny Green died from AIDS-related complications. His death stunned the R&B world. Fans couldn't believe that the gentle voice that once sang of love and devotion was gone. Kenny's legacy lives on in the softness of his melodies, but also as a sobering reminder that talent, fame, and beauty offer no protection from real-world consequences. His story isn't just about loss. It's a warning, and a call for awareness, responsibility, and compassion in the fight against HIV/AIDS. Sylvester, the disco legend silenced by AIDS. Sylvester was more than a disco star. He was a living declaration of freedom. With electrifying anthems like You Make Me Feel, Mighty Real, he didn't just dominate the dance floor, he reshaped it. His voice soared, his presence commanded attention, and his music became a refuge for anyone who dared to live outside society's rules. In the 1970s and early 80s, Sylvester stood boldly in his truth. Openly gay, unapologetic, and radiant, he lived at a time when visibility itself was an act of rebellion. The disco era, flooded with lights, sweat, rhythm, and desire, gave him space to be fully himself. In that world, sex wasn't just pleasure. It was liberation. It was connection. It was freedom without breaks. But freedom came with blind spots. The endless nights, the euphoric highs, and the culture of casual, unprotected encounters carried dangers no one fully understood or wanted to face. Like many during that era, Sylvester believed the party would never end. No one imagined that a single unguarded moment could quietly rewrite an entire life. By the mid-1980s, whispers of a terrifying new disease began spreading: AIDS. Fear followed fast, wrapped in stigma, shame, and silence. Even within the LGBTQ+ community, the virus was misunderstood and deeply feared. Sylvester, like so many others, tried to outrun the truth, clinging to joy, connection, and the illusion of safety. Then his body began to speak. Unexplained fatigue, strange illnesses, a growing weakness he could no longer ignore. In 1987, Sylvester received the diagnosis that would change everything: HIV. At a time when compassion was scarce and judgment was ruthless, fame offered no protection. He faced the disease and society's cruelty head-on. Yet even as his health faded, Sylvester refused to let his light die quietly. He continued to create, to inspire, to live with dignity and courage. He turned pain into purpose, choosing visibility over silence. In December 1988, Sylvester passed away from AIDS-related complications. He was just 41 years old. His death sent shockwaves through the music world and the LGBTQ+ community, but his legacy endures. Sylvester is remembered not only for his timeless music, but for his fearless authenticity, his message of self-love, and the hard lessons his life left behind. His story reminds us that living boldly should never mean living carelessly, and that protecting our health is not a betrayal of freedom, but an act of self-respect. Sylvester lived loud, loved fully, and left behind a truth that still echoes today. Richard Pryor: laughter, pain, and a quiet ending. Richard Pryor was a comedy legend who turned raw pain into fearless laughter. He didn't just tell jokes, he told the truth. Through brutal honesty about race, sex, addiction, and survival, Pryor reshaped comedy forever and became one of the most influential voices the world had ever heard. But behind the roaring crowds and standing ovations was a life few people truly understood. Richard lived without filters or apologies, even when facing the darkest parts of himself. His childhood was marked by violence, neglect, and emotional trauma. Raised in poverty, surrounded by abuse from those meant to protect him, he grew up starved for love and stability. Those early wounds never healed. Instead, they followed him into adulthood, shaping his relationships and his relentless need for validation. For Pryor, sex became more than desire, it became escape. A way to silence the pain, to feel control where he once had none. But masking trauma with pleasure comes at a cost. And eventually, that cost caught up with him. In his later years, Richard was still commanding the stage, still brilliant, still sharp. But his body was tired. His spirit was worn. After multiple failed marriages and countless unstable relationships, he continued chasing brief connections to fill a lifelong void. One night in Los Angeles, what seemed like another fleeting encounter turned into something terrifying. Instead of pleasure, Richard was hit with crushing pain. His chest tightening, his breath fading, exhaustion flooding his body. Having lived for years with multiple sclerosis, he knew this pain was different. Deeper. More dangerous. Though he didn't say it out loud, he felt it in his bones, his body was giving up. Weeks later, he was hospitalized. Doctors confirmed he had suffered a heart attack. Years of emotional chaos, stress, addiction, and unresolved trauma had finally taken their toll. His mind and body had been fighting a losing battle for far too long. When Richard Pryor passed away in 2005, the world lost a genius, but also a wounded soul who never truly found peace. For some, moments of passion become ticking time bombs. These stories remind us how fragile life really is, and how unhealed pain can quietly destroy even the brightest stars. What are your thoughts on the tragic endings of these legends? Share your perspective in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us for more untold stories from the hidden side of Hollywood.